Does any of this look familiar to you? See this young man where he's standing in front of a mural? This is George Floyd, and this was back in the anniversary of George Floyd. And I'm just gonna go through some photos. That's Cup Foods, and it was pictured here on CNN. George Floyd is remembered 1 year after his death. Now I want you to see this. 3rd anniversary of George Floyd murder. Has anything changed? This was on CNN. And underneath the knee of that officer is George Floyd. And he's pleading and begging that he can't breathe. Now I want you to look at something else here. How does this look? This is part 2 of the other video. I just wanted to go over some of those photos. You see this guy right here, he looks like he's enjoying this moment. And you look at the smirks on the faces of these men. And what do we have here? An officer. Very much similar. But this is a lynching. And this is, mind you, through an era of segregation. For those who think segregation is such a great, wonderful thing. This is what comes with it. Okay? This is that article that I had read earlier. And so, racial segregation and the Southern lynching. Okay? This goes into an abstract. And it talks about, some of what had happened back then. The literature on ethnic fractionalization and the conflict has yet to be extended to the American past. In particular, the empirical relationship between racial residential segregation and lynching is unknown. The existing economic, social, and political theories of lynching contain implicit hypotheses about the relationship between racial segregation and racial violence, consistent with more general theories of social conflict, because Southern lynching occurred in rural and urban, get it? Rural and urban areas alike. Traditional urban measures of racial segregation cannot be used to estimate the relationships. Okay? Earlier analysis has analyzed the relationships between lynching and the racial proportions, a poor proxy for racial segregation. Okay? We use a newly developed household level measure of residential segregation, Logan and Parman, 2017, that can distinguish between the effects of increasing racial homogeneity of a location and the tendency to segregate within a location given a particular racial composition, to estimate the correlation between racial segregation and lynching in the southern counties of the U.S. We find that the conditional on racial composition, racially segregated counties were much more likely to experience lynchings, consistent with the hypothesis that segregation is related to interracial violence. We find that segregation is highly correlated with African American lynching, but uncorrelated with white lynching. These results extend the analysis of racial ethnic conflict into the past and shown that the effects of social interactions and interracial proximity in rural areas are as important as those in the urban areas. So I'm just going to stop there, okay? So let's go back to this picture. This will be considered an urban area, okay? In our time. And this is what we would call a public lynching in our time. Okay. Okay, so we have many articles that we can look up talking about some of the disparities that still persist even till today. Does segregation still exist? U.S. neighborhoods are more segregated than a generation ago. How racial segregation still divides quality of opportunity. according to findings released Thursday. So this is 2024, May 14th, not very long ago, just last year. Thursday, from the latest Child Opportunity Index, Black Latino children in the U.S. are much more likely than their white counterparts to grow up in what? How racial segregation continues to determine opportunity for American kids. What did they just do this year in 2025? Dismantle Department of Education. Some people think that's a good thing, but they're the voice, they're the mediator, they're the oversight of children of color and people who have disabilities, and the special education programs and the funding that we get in the low-income neighborhoods. Without that, who's going to be the voice and what's going to happen next? More than half a century after racial segregation practices like redlining were outlawed, data suggests that race still plays a huge role in determining what kind of neighborhood a child grows up in. According to the findings released Thursday from the latest Child Opportunity Index, Black and Latino children in the U.S. are much more likely than their white counterparts to grow up in neighborhoods with poor health outcomes, fewer educational opportunities, and worse economic conditions. Researchers at Brandeis University in Boston, who created the Child Opportunity Index, have for more than a decade analyzed quality of opportunity available to children in thousands of neighborhoods nationwide. So more than 40 neighborhood factors, including building vacancy rates, green space, employment rates, are considered, creating a portrait of the country's 73,000 census tracts. In the report, researchers involved in the Brandeis University project considered the country's 100 largest metro areas, finding deep disparities based on race, including when accounting for poverty. According to the report, a key form of inequality, the separation of children in neighborhoods with vastly different conditions, has been created and maintained by residential segregation. I'm going to stop there. This right here is vegetables. Research at Child Opportunity Index said small factors in a child environment, like the availability of fresh vegetables and other healthy foods, compounded on what? Top of one another to affect children's health. Positive and negative factors within neighborhoods are often layered, creating compounding effects for children that live there. Clemens Nolik, research director for the project, told the USA Today. Let's go up and see. When was this article? Very short, very precise. USA Today. Okay. And so this one is in 2024 when I go back. Okay? This is in 2024. Okay? What do we see happening right now? Let's take a look. Doge, what has it been doing? Okay, what have we been seeing people do lately? I'm going to show you the images. Doge staffers resign in mass to protest mass slashing. Okay, 21 employees of the department renamed Doge resigned to protest. Okay, protests erupt across Central Florida and the U.S. opposing what? Doge. Let's take a look at some of these protests that we're seeing happening in all 50 states. We see people of all backgrounds, all walks of life, different colors, races. No Musk. What do we see happening here? Worst president ever. Dump Trump. Make America sane again. The voices of so many are being heard and felt all over the country, all over the U.S. People are tired, And we're going to see more and more and more of this. It's not going to stop. It's not going to go away because of a few's own interest and those who hold all the wealth, which is unequal. And it definitely hurts so many of us. We've been seeing this gradually erupting everywhere, and the protests are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But what do we see the people that they're protesting about doing? They think they're doing the right thing, but they're not. They're creating more unrest. They're creating more fear and more anxiety. They're making people more worried about the future of their kids and their grandkids. And this is what we're seeing. Don't take away our health care. As Trump care protests grow, GOP senators duck and dodge determined voters. So you tell me if segregation is a good thing, if these people that are in office, which seem to be more like a regime, are a good thing. I think not. I think we're creating a time bomb that is ticking, and eventually we don't want to see what happens when it explodes. And we're getting there. Every second of the minute, of the hour, the days, it doesn't seem to get any better. So if you just go down, you see all these different protests that have happened, and they've been happening more and more frequent.